Welcome back, everyone. We're kicking off a new deep dive, and this time we're heading into the world of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of...
Really diving deep, huh?
That's the plan. We're going to tackle some of the most fascinating elements, the Ale, the Aes Sedai, and those prophecies, of course.
Can't forget those prophecies.
Right, they kind of drive everything. So we've got excerpts from New Spring and the first 11 books of The Wheel of Time ready to go.
Plus a little extra from the world of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time and the Origins book.
Exactly. So if you want to wrap your head around the Ale, Aes Sedai, and prophecies, this is the place to be.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, first up, the Ale. Everyone picture them. That mysterious warrior society, all veiled and secretive.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely an enigma.
Totally. And they speak the old tongue, too. You know, the language from the Age of Legends.
Yeah, it gives you chills. Remember that scene where they shout, "Ain't a line! One man alone" in the old talk.
Oh, yeah. So intense. Sends shivers down your spine.
That scene is more than just a cool moment, though. It actually hints at the importance of prophecy and individual strength in this world.
So, Aetaieli, it's not just a battle cry. It's like a direct link to these prophecies about someone really important, someone who hasn't shown up yet.
Exactly. And here's the thing that gets me about the Ale. They weren't always warriors.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They used to be the Deshane Ale.
Totally peaceful people. They lived by something called the Way of the Leaf. Absolutely no violence.
That's a huge shift, going from no violence to, like, the fiercest warriors around. How did that even happen? That's the puzzle we're going to try to solve. What do you think caused this change?
It's a question with big implications. If we want to really understand the Ale and their role in everything that's happening, we need to figure out what made them leave their peaceful ways behind.
All right, so we have the Ale, all wrapped up in mystery and prophecy. Now let's shift gears and talk about the Aes Sedai and the White Tower.
The center of Aes Sedai power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, they're split into 7 Atrazars: blue, brown, green, gray, red, white, and yellow.
Each Aja has its own specialty, and there's like a definite pecking order within the tower.
Right. A clear hierarchy. It's like they took the whole world and shrunk it down into the White Tower.
It really is. Each Aja has its own perspective on power and how to use it, and their interactions. Oh man, it's like watching real-world politics unfold, full of alliances and rivalries. They're always maneuvering for power.
And they even have a word for it, right? Dies Damar.
The great game. It's all about manipulating situations and using your words like weapons. Lots happening beneath the surface all the time.
And of course, Aes Sedai training is intense. Novices and accepted, those women training to become Aes Sedai, go through some tough trials.
They go through a lot.
Including that ritual silence during the final test, right?
Yeah.
And then they have to choose an Aja.
Talk about pressure.
What strikes you about the whole training process?
It's how they take these women and shape them into such powerful figures, but at the same time, they're making them confront their own limit. Like the ritual silence. It's not just about being disciplined. It's about proving you can control your emotions and really focus your will.
It makes you think, what qualities do you need to handle that much power? Okay, so we've got these warriors following prophecies, and this super powerful organization with its own internal politics. Now let's bring in the prophecies themselves, those foretellings that can either guide or derail entire nations. There was this Aes Sedai, Guitar Moroso, who had a foretelling about a battle, and it really shook up the White Tower. What do you think was so impactful about that specific foretelling?
Prophecies in this world are a minefield. They give you these glimpses of the future, but figuring out what they really mean is like, well, walking a tightrope. You interpret it wrong, and you could end up causing the very thing you're trying to prevent.
So it's like trying to avoid a prophecy could actually make it happen. Tricky.
Exactly. And what makes Guitar Moroso's foretelling stand out is it highlights that danger. Even the most powerful Aes Sedai can have trouble understanding the will of the pattern.
And their interpretation can have huge consequences. And talking about prophecies having consequence, remember the Ale War? That was a huge turning point.
A pivotal moment.
Well, guess what triggered it? Yep, another foretelling. The Ale were convinced they had found the Dragon Reborn, that central figure in so many prophecies, and they actually broke centuries of tradition to go to war. What do you think it was about this particular prophecy that pushed them to make such a drastic decision?
We have to look at the Ale mindset. They weren't just reacting to a prophecy. They were responding to a deep-rooted belief system. They were yearning for a return to their mythical path. The Dragon Reborn prophecy wasn't just a prediction for them. It was a sign.
A sign that it was time to reclaim their lost glory.
Exactly. Time to fulfill their destiny.
So you're saying that prophecy resonated with something deeper within their culture. It wasn't just the words themselves, but what they represented.
Right. And that's what makes prophecies so powerful. They tap into those hopes, fears, deepest desires. And sometimes they can push us to do things we never thought possible.
Wow. Yeah. So we have these Ale, driven by prophecy and their history, ditching their peaceful ways. And then we have the Aes Sedai with immense power, but bound by strict rules and stuck in their political games. There's a lot to process.
And we haven't even talked about the Dragon Reborn prophecy itself, the one that sparked the Ale War. It's the core of the entire story. It talks about this figure who's destined to either save the world or completely destroy it. Pretty intense, right?
The potential for both creation and destruction, all in one person. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
It is. But before we dive into that prophecy head first, we should talk about what it means to live in a world where prophecies hold such power. What does it tell us about fate and free will? Is it even possible to defy a prophecy? Or are the characters just playing out a script that's already been written? These are the questions we'll be wrestling with as we keep going on this deep dive. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the grand scheme of things, but the individual stories are what really get.
Yeah, it's like, how much control do these characters even have? Like, take the Ale, for example. That decision to break the way of the leaf, to just abandon centuries of pacifism, that couldn't have been an easy call.
Oh, definitely not. It was a collective choice, but it all came down to how they saw the prophecy and their dedication to those ancient beliefs. They believed they were fulfilling their destiny.
But that choice had consequences, didn't it? It changed them from peace-loving people into a major force to be reckoned with. I mean, they waged a full-on war, the Ale War. That had to have had a massive impact.
It definitely did. The Ale War, it destabilized entire nations, broke apart alliances, set the stage for so much that happens later on. It really shows you that even actions based on prophecy can have unintended consequences.
Big time. So we've got the Ale wrestling with prophecy and tradition. What about the Aes Sedai? How are they dealing with this whole world where prophecies can just rewrite history?
Well, inside the White Tower, you see these individuals grappling with questions of power, duty, ambition. The Aes Sedai, they're incredibly powerful, channeling the one power, but they're also bound by the three oaths. These oaths limit how they can use their power.
Yeah, the three oaths. They can't lie, they can't use the power as a weapon unless it's self-defense, and they can't make weapons.
Yeah.
Seems like those oaths would cause some tough situations.
Oh, they absolutely do. The oaths are there to protect the world from people abusing the one power, but they also create these internal struggles for the Aes Sedai. Do they always follow the oaths exactly, or do they bend the rules if they think it's for the greater good? It's this constant battle.
And then on top of that, you've got Dace Daemar, that whole political game within the White Tower just adds another layer of complexity.
Dace Daemar. It reminds us that even the Aes Sedai, for all their oaths and their power, they're still human. They've got ambitions, political goals. They're not above manipulating things to get what they want. It's this never-ending dance of power.
Sounds like a high-stakes game of chess where every move has a consequence.
Exactly. And in this game, you have characters like Moiraine and Siuan, these two young Aes Sedai, trying to figure out the tower while also believing they need to fulfill the world. They really show that tension between wanting power and feeling something bigger.
Moiraine and Siuan, their relationship is so interesting. Best friends, confidants. They can even talk telepathically. That kind of trust and connection must be invaluable in such a dangerous world.
Oh, absolutely. Their bond, it's a symbol of connection and trust in a world where power and prophecy can be isolated. It highlights how important relationships are, especially when facing crazy. Their story reminds us that even with magic and the connections with others.
So it's not just about prophecies and powerful groups. It's about individual choices.
And it's not just the Dragon Reborn either. It's about where he comes from, the people he surrounds with, how their choices and actions all weave into the story. It reminds us that we're all connected and what we do affects everyone around us.
So we've talked about how prophecies can shape death, but is there any way to be sure what a foretelling means? They seem pretty open to interpretation, which could cause a lot of problems.
That's the tricky part. Prophecies are full of symbolism and they're vague.
Yeah.
And sometimes trying to stop a connection happens.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're trying to prevent something, but end up causing it.
Exactly. A real paradox. If you know the future, can you change it? Or are you just stuck playing the role fate gave you? It makes you think about free will in a world ruled by prophecy.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that Dragon Reborn prophet, the one that got the Ale fighting. What does it actually say and why is it so important?
The Dragon Reborn prophecy, it's a bunch of old verses and cryptic sayings. Basically, it predicts the return of this super powerful figure, the dragon, who will either save the world from the Dark One or destroy it in the process.
Oh, talk about pressure. Imagine knowing you're supposed to either save everyone or destroy everything.
Right. That's the core of it, the tension between salvation and destruction. It reminds us that even the most powerful people can be good or evil, and their choices have huge consequences. The Dragon Reborn, he's not just a hero, he could easily become a tyrant.
Sounds like that prophecy is a ticking time bomb. Everyone's just waiting to see who this guy is and what he's going to do. No wonder the Ale were so set on finding him. They thought he was the key to their destiny.
Exactly. They thought they'd found him in the Two Rivers, remember? That's what kicked off the Ale War. And that war, as we said, changed everything. So we have the Ale, driven by prophecy and longing for their past. We have the Aes Sedai with all their power, but also bound by rules and caught up in their own games. And looming over everything is the Dragon Reborn, a guy whose fate is tied to the fate of the world. It's setting up for a major showdown. It is. And as we get to know the characters better, you'll see how these forces, prophecy, power, choice, play out in their lives. You'll see them struggling with their destinies, making tough calls, and shaping what happens next.
Okay, I'm ready to meet these characters and see how their stories unfold. Okay, you've really given us a sense of this world. Prophecies controlling destinies, power struggles in the White Tower, Ale warriors on a mission. But I'm really curious about the actual people involved. Can we talk about some of those characters and how they deal with all this?
Absolutely. The individual story, that's where those big themes of the Wheel of Time really come alive. Let's take Randall Thor, for example. This young guy from the Two Rivers. That's where the story starts, right? He finds himself thrown into a destiny he never wanted.
You're talking about the guy everyone thinks is the Dragon Reborn, the one the Ale is searching for.
That's the one Rand's journey. It's a perfect example of what happens when an ordinary person is suddenly facing these extraordinary circumstances. He's told he's supposed to save the world, but the path to getting there, it's full of danger and sacrifice, and he's not exactly happy.
So he doesn't just accept this chosen one thing. That's different. Most heroes in stories like this, they can't wait to jump into their destiny.
Rand's not like that. He actually resists the whole Dragon Reborn idea. He struggles with what people expect of him, with the fact that what he does could either save or destroy everything. It's a lot to handle, and he doesn't take it lightly.
It makes you think, though. How do you cope with that pressure, knowing that the whole world might depend on you?
Rand's struggles show us the real human cost of prophecy. He's constantly making hard decisions, often without enough information. And he goes through the highs of power and the lows of law. It reminds us that prophecies, with all their big pronouncements, they actually play out in the lives of real people.
That's a great point. It's easy to forget that even in a world with magic and fantasy, the characters still have to deal with emotions and consequence. What about Rand's friends from the Two Rivers? Do they get pulled into this whole save the world thing too?
They do. Each of them goes on their own journey. They face challenges, discover strengths they didn't know they had, and their stories show us that you don't have to be directly involved with a prophecy to play a big part.
So it's not all about the Dragon Reborn. It's about the people around him, their relationships, and the sacrifices they make.
Exactly. The Wheel of Time, it highlights community, friendship, loyalty. Those things are super important when you're up against impossible odds. It reminds us that we're not meant to go through life alone, and that the connections we have with each other can help us overcome anything.
Seems like we keep coming back to that idea of connect. It's not just about individuals. It's about the relationships they build and how they support each other.
You're right. Whether it's the Ael's fierce loyalty to their clan, the bonds between Aes Sedai and their Ashas, or the friendships between Rand and his friends' relationships are super important. They shape individual destinies and move the story forward. It's a major theme throughout the whole.
So we've talked about the Ale going from peaceful to warriors, White Tower and Aes Sedai, power prophecies, and what people like Randall Thor go through. What's the takeaway for our listeners? Why should they dive into the Wheel of Time?
You know, one of the best things about the Wheel of Time is that it doesn't give you easy answers. It makes you think about power, fate, individual choice. It doesn't tell you what to believe. It invites you to explore and figure things out for yourself.
It's a story that makes you think, not just about the story's world, but about your own world, too.
Exactly. As you get further into the series, you'll question what you thought you knew, see things from different angles, and wrestle with these moral dilemmas that have no right or wrong answers. It's a story that sticks with you.
That's what I love about a good deep dive. It's not just learning new stuff. It's about understanding the world and yourself better.
Well said. And maybe as you follow these characters, you'll see some of those themes. Choice, connection, fighting against fate in your own life. You might even find the strength to face your own personal dragon.
I like that. So to wrap things up, if you're looking for a story that makes you think and feel, that throws you into this amazing world and makes you really consider what shapes our lives, The Wheel of Time is definitely worth checking out.
I completely agree. It's a journey that'll stick with you long after you finish the last page.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored The Wheel of Time.
It's been great sharing this with you.
Until next time, keep diving.
Oh.